What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. So Anuj gave me this fantastic question based off a conversation he had with a friend the other day. He said, how would you go about becoming more courageous? And in his I guess in his conversation with his friend, he was expressing the desire to become someone who enjoys taking more calculated risks. And then I guess the second part of this question or this idea is that then naturally you tend to only take safe risks. So how do you become more courageous, and how do you become someone who enjoys taking more calculated risks? And I actually have I suppose a bit of a contrarian take on this. First, let's talk about how to become more courageous. Then let's talk about the idea of taking more calculated risk. First, to become more courageous, like any other skill, you have to put yourself in situations that require courage. Now, it doesn't have to be physical courage, because in a lot of instances, physical courage is actually easier to come by than, say, moral courage. Moral courage is the courage it requires to stand up and say the thing that's uncomfortable to a friend when you see them acting in a way that's not in alignment with the person that you know they're capable of being, or having the courage to have a hard conversation with your significant other to say, this isn't the relationship, it's not serving me, it's not what I want, or it's not everything that it could be because of X, Y, and Z. It's the moral courage required to go forth into the world and say the thing that would be easier to just leave unsaid. I think that right there is the main way that most of us suffer from a lack of courage. Physical courage, I think, it tends to be a little bit easier to come by because you have a physiological imperative. Typically, when there's physical courage involved, it's because something physically risky and physically demanding is happening. Your body will compensate with cortisol and adrenaline. That's really great and helpful. And so usually you don't have a lot of time in instances that require physical courage to get inside your head and start to question. Your body is more or less on this autonomous motion, right? And there's not much you can do about that. You're either the person who instinctively runs towards the fire, or you're the person that runs away from the fire. That's not really the opportunity for you to improve that skill. But I think putting yourself in situations to deploy moral courage, that's something that you can do every single day. And that's quite a bit harder than a lot of people appreciate. And that's one of the reasons why I actually encourage the entrepreneurs that I coach to create content every day, to get on Instagram and shoot a video talking to the camera, sharing the things that have been impactful and useful for them on their journey towards success. Because inevitably, the things that have enabled them to be successful, that have allowed them to live an extraordinary life, which by definition is extraordinary. It means they are not doing things that the average person is doing, which means they have opinions, they have behaviors and habits that are not normal. That right there, expressing and sharing the things that don't make you normal, that make you stand out in the crowd, that requires courage. And so sitting down every day and doing something that makes you uncomfortable, such as opening up the Instagram app and talking to the camera, which can be one of the scariest things in the world, talking to nobody, right? And then putting it out into the world, sharing your ideas and things, and putting yourself in the firing line to take flack from strangers, from haters, people who want to rip you down, right? That requires courage. So that's a great way to develop this courage muscle. But let's circle this back around, because the second part of this idea was this person that was talking to Anuj said he wished he was somebody who enjoyed taking calculated risks instead of just somebody who takes comfortable risks. Now, here's the thing about risk. Nobody actually enjoys taking calculated risks. It's actually a paradigm shift that the individual has occurred, because risk by definition is risky. It is scary. And nobody who is engaging in risky behaviors, with exceptions, there are gamblers or addicts or people who cannot feel alive without taking ridiculous risks and playing Russian roulette, right? But this idea of controlled or calculated risks, here's the thing. The people taking those calculated, controlled risks, they don't perceive the risk in the same way that you do. They actually look at it and say that risk is acceptable. It is manageable. And so in their mind, it is a safe risk. Whereas this person, they say, I tend to only take safe risks. Yeah, so does everybody else. Nobody is really taking extraneous risks above and beyond their own calculated ability to withstand. Very few people are putting their lives on the line or their financial futures on the line in any one single risky decision, right? What's actually happening is people always make calculated risks, safe risks relative to their competency, to their capacity. And the more competent, the more capacity that you have, the larger your surface area of risk. And for you, it would look like a comfortable risk, a safe risk. This thing, I'm okay with this. Whereas somebody else would look at that and be like, that's too risky. It's not too risky for the individual taking it because to them, they say, I have the competency. This is within my realm of acceptability. Now, some people have different realms of acceptability. Some people are very risk averse and they're like, I only want to take on 15% risk, however you would want to quantify that. And somebody else is like, I'll take 70% risk, right? But for both of those individuals, it tends to be relative to what they perceive as their own ability to withstand the consequences of the risk one way or the other. And so, for instance, when I was a rock climber, people would always come up to me and they'd be like, oh, I could never do that. I'm afraid of heights. It seems so risky. You must love adrenaline. And the thing is, not never, but very rarely experienced any adrenaline boost from rock climbing. In fact, what I told people was that if I experience adrenaline while I'm on the wall, something has gone terribly wrong. And I've put myself in a very dangerous position that I don't want to be in, and that my body is now reacting with adrenaline. But the reason I'm up there on that cliff doing the thing that I'm doing is because I believe it's within my capacity. It's within my level of competency. And so it doesn't rise to the level of a risk. It's an acceptable risk. Somebody else would look at it and they'd say that's too much risk. But for me, given my competency, it was not. Case in point, Alex Honnold. If you've watched Free Solo, Alex is a great dude, but for every other human on the planet, what he did when he free soloed El Capitan was an unacceptable risk for them. For him, very interestingly, when you talk to him, he doesn't see this as a calculated risk. He says, I can do this. It's within my competency, within my capacity. Now, we can disagree about whether or not he's delusional or not, but for him, from his perspective, he did not go up there thinking that there was a better than 50-50 chance of him dying. He thought there was an 80, 90, 95% chance everything was going to be fine. Is that a calculated risk? Sure. Is that a safe risk? By no means, right? And so that's the idea I would encourage people is if you want to become somebody who gets outside of your comfort zone or that, in your mind is more courageous to take these risks, just understand it starts by becoming more competent. The more competent you become as a rock climber, the more rock climbs that you can do that to everybody else, it looks risky. The more competent that you become as an entrepreneur, the bigger risks that you can take financially because you know that you can regain it. Like you have that ability, right? The more difficult you are to kill because you are a good fighter, because you're fit, because you have physical resources, because you have love and family, like the more you have of that stuff, the more risks you can take. Because to you, losing it isn't the risk. You know you can get it back. And so if you want to become more courageous in this instance and take more calculated risk, it starts by going and becoming way more competent. Do that and your surface area of risk and what you will accept will expand. And as a consequence, the more likely you will be to experience all the positive things that come from taking risks, which is just another way of saying you get lucky. So that's going to do it for me, guys and gals. I'll see you in the next episode. Like me flying a plane probably ends up with me dead. Yeah. Is flying a plane risky for a pilot, for a NASA astronaut? Probably not, right? Why? Because they're more competent. Like it's not me flying is not a calculated risk. It's a stupid risk given my level of competency. You going and doing a rock climb that I can do easily, that's stupid because it's outside of your competency. And so like your risks shrink relative to your capacity. If you want to be able to take on more risks, you want to be harder to kill in life, increase your capacity. It's just that simple.
So when you think about Elon Musk's story where he got like a 200 mil paycheck from PayPal, $100 million check for PayPal, but then he put it all into SpaceX, Tesla, and then I forget the sun.
Solar City.
Solar City. Would you say for him that was probably a very like safe. Well, not very safe, but it was a relatively safe risk because he probably perceived himself as competent.
Yeah, I mean, there's no risk. I mean, Elon Musk, it's crazy for people to think like, oh, he made $100 million in PayPal and then he went and put it all back into these businesses. That seems incredibly risky. What if they failed? But you have to understand, like, it's not risky for two reasons. Number one is he knew what's the downside of the risk. The downside of the risk is he loses everything and he goes back to zero. How big of a risk is that really? In the grand scheme of things, if you've already had everything taken away from you, because we all start at zero, you lived in the van, you lived on ramen, you couch surfed, right? Like, you've already been there. So is that really the worst case scenario? Like just returning back to the state of equilibrium from which you came? Like, no, that's actually not that big of a risk in the grand scheme. But people look at like the social impact of having to start over and like, what will other people say? And they think that's the risk. But if you don't care about that, which clearly Elon does not, then it's not a risk, which means like divorce yourself from the opinion of others. And then a lot of the things that we worry about in life no longer become things even worth worrying about, because it's like, who cares if you start over? You've already done that before. Secondly, is he knew like, hey, listen, like I've already built $100 million business. I know I can do it again. So I'm going to try and build $1 billion or $100 billion or $1 trillion company. And I'm going to need these resources to do that. If I lose it in the meantime, that's fine, because like I need next to nothing to live. So it's not like I'm going to end up on, he's not going to end up on the street. Yeah. And I think that's a really important idea for a lot of people, is to realize, like, if you're listening to this podcast, you have access to the internet and you have, you know, the wealth of the human existence at your fingertips. You probably also have a network of friends, of family, of acquaintances, people that you could lean on if you lost everything long enough to start rebuilding. And so this failure is almost never fatal, especially in today's world. Like, so you lose it all, you got to go live on your dad's couch. Is that really the worst thing ever? It's like, sure, maybe your ego gets hit because your friends are laughing at you, but does that fucking matter? No, it really doesn't. Like, and so I think so much of the fears or the perceived risks is only in relation to our opinions of our fear of the opinions of others. It's like most people, I mean, we've talked about this before too, is that like most people aren't afraid of failing. They're afraid of the judgments of their friends and family of that failure. Yeah. Like, oh, I left my job to go start that business, and if it fails, I actually don't care so much if the business fails, because I'm chasing and pursuing my dream. And most people are okay failing in pursuit of their glory. I think that's great. It's worse to fail in a life of mediocrity, right? And you get to the end of your life and you're like, I never even took the chance. I never even went for the thing. And so most people are okay with that idea of failing in pursuit of their glory, but then what actually stops them from leaving the job to go start the business is like their sister tells them like, oh, that's not a good idea. Like, your brother just got this promotion at his job and he's doing good, and he just bought this new car and they got this new house and they're looking, everything's so good. And now you're taking a step out of that corporate route to go start your thing. And now what if you lose? Now you fall below the peg than him. Now you're lower on the ladder. And so now you're losing the status game and the wealth game. And it's like, damn, that really sucks. But it only sucks if you care. It only sucks if you actually compare yourself to other people. If instead you just compare yourself relative to like the effort that you're putting in, the person that you want to become, to be the type of person who takes courageous action, that doesn't live the expectations that society puts on you, and instead says, this is the thing that I want to do with my life, nothing can hurt you. Nothing can fucking hurt you.